Now we're down the stretch for the legislative session. What bills remain and how will they impact us here in Minot? We speak with Mayor Sipma and our city manager about that. Plus, we're making a major change to our rapid COVID-19 screening starting this week. Stay tuned for what those changes may be and what to look forward to in the first city council meeting in April. It's all coming up this week ahead. Now, 10 weeks ago, I spoke about how the decisions our state representatives are making in Bismarck impact us locally. Now we're past what's known as crossover. It's the time when the passed bills from the House move over to the Senate for approval and vice versa. We're getting a more accurate view of what could become law when the session comes to a close. For Minot, we've had council members and staff make dozens of trips to the state capitol to speak on things from infrastructure funding, local control bills, and other important legislation that may impact us positively or negatively in our community. It's all coming to a head. Current hopes from legislative leadership is to adjourn the session with about 8 to 10 days left. Also for their ability to go over and redistrict based off of census data later this year. By state law, the session could not last longer than 80 days throughout the whole biennium. That would put us at April 30th. That means we're less than a month away before the session closes and we can start to plan on how to manage any changes in funding, law, or any kind of regulations. Our main focus this session, as is the case in just about every session, are the appropriation bills, the spending bills, or the bonding bills. House Bill 1020, for example, would allocate $82.5 million to the State Water Commission for Mouse River enhanced flood control. House Bill 1431 provides a shortened time frame for flood control and could save you, the taxpayers, maybe $100 million. There are more bills still awaiting a floor hearing that will have lasting impacts to us. We'll dive deeper to that in just a second with the mayor and city manager. Those bills can shape the community physically and politically for a generation, if not more. Our lawmakers in Bismarck have been running a marathon to get to this point, and so have our aldermen, our alderwomen, and staff. They've been running right alongside of them. The finish line is in sight. We're going to do what we can to battle on behalf of this city and for you at the Capitol. Just like I mentioned 10 short weeks ago, we only get 80 days in over 600. We have to make the most of it. So right now, I want to get a little bit more granular and talk about the bills we've been eyeing, testifying for, testifying against in the last weeks of the legislative session. To do that, I want to bring in the two men leading the charge for us here in Minot at the Capitol. That's Mayor Sipma and City Manager Harold Stewart. Gentlemen, welcome back and thanks for making time for us once again today.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Derek.
Oh, okay. First, I want to touch on the two major bills. House Bill 1020, 1431. We've been on these since the introduction of these bills. Mr. Mayor, let's start with you. House Bill 1020 is an allocation bill to the State Water Commission for funding for flood control here in Minot. And 1431 is more of a bonding bill for other projects. Both do help with flood control, but why are both important on their own merit?
Well, Derek, if we take a look at the two different bills separately, the entire intent of the North Dakota legislature this session was to, after it was kind of weeded out of some of the bills that were, let's say, repetitive, different bills were identified to, I think, address the individual needs of certain circumstance. 1020 itself, in this case, is for the State Water Commission and of course, when we talk about the State Water Commission, that is the funding mechanism for the Mouse River Enhanced Flood Protection Project. When this originally kicked off, the discussion was not only getting the $33 million that the city of Minot had turned back last biennium because of a shortfall in the Natural Resources Water Trust Fund, but then the new allocation to move forward for the next biennium. Of course, that started off at 74.5, has now edged north of 80. We're working closely with our legislative partners, not only the Minot representatives, but both leadership in the House and Senate, to try to get more, as some of the revenue projections have come in recently for the biennium ahead, so that we can really keep flood control not only moving at the pace that it has been, but seeing if we can speed that pace up. As we testified earlier, moving that time frame from a 20-year down to a 12 can save north of $100 million in inflationary construction costs and well more than $50 million in long-term flood insurance premiums for residents in the valley. So 1020 itself, it is exceptionally important, and I would expect to see success in that, because there has been just a lot of collective work, not only from the folks in Minot, leadership down in the state house and the state senate, and just all of the folks that really play a part in this, especially the SRJB.
Now, Harold, maybe I'll have you jump in on 1431. It was given a due pass nod by the Finance and Taxation Committee, and it has now moved on to the Appropriations Committee. If this were to pass, are the benefits to Minot solely based on flood control, or can we look at things beyond that project?
Well, you can definitely look at things beyond. Mayor just referred to insurance rates. This is going to affect housing demand in these areas, and whether or not housing is even available in those areas. You have a river that goes through the heart of your community, and so how well can you use the land and the space around that river in a safe manner? So this is going to affect us economically, residential growth, and the cost of a lot of those types of things. I've been on the public record as well about concern. You can notice even though we have high demand for housing within our community, houses that are in the valley near the river, part of the 2011 flood, likely to be in the floodplain maps from FEMA in the future. We're seeing house prices on those stay very low, and they're staying on the market for a long period of time without any interest in purchasing them. And so, if you've invested a lot of your life in a house is probably one of the biggest investments we make in a personal purchase. And so if that's not growing in value or is devaluing, that has a significant economic financial impact on individuals, let alone the fact of having to remodel or repurpose those homes after the flood and what that's done to you financially going forward as well. And so, and all that goes back into the health of our economy. If your discretionary income has been evaporated, and by discretionary income, what I mean is when you get your paycheck and you pay all your bills, your house payment, your utilities, all those types of things, how much money do you have left at your discretion to spend? Well, if you're maxed out paycheck to paycheck and you have no discretionary income, that means you don't have the money to go eat at the restaurants or shop at the local stores or do those types of things. And so it has an impact that reverberates through the community as a whole. So you have the safety aspect, you have the economic impact, and then the effect on personal finances within the community that trickles out to us as a community as well. So these are all major issues to be cognizant of and to try and be purposeful in how we address these.
Harold, I want to shift our conversation to funding things locally now. You testified on House Bill 1419, which would allow cities in North Dakota to use an infrastructure fee instead of a special assessment. Why is that an important tool? And really, what's the difference between those funding structures?
So this was a bill that was spearheaded by Bismarck specifically, and one of the other communities out on the eastern side of the state, looking for mechanisms. Basically what they found is through the special assessments, which is basically if we come in and do a specific infrastructure project that's specific to your area, through state law, we have the ability to issue a special assessment, which in essence is a tax on your property tax that helps cover the cost of that infrastructure because you're the primary user of it. There's a public interest in it, and it makes more sense for the city to provide that service or put in that infrastructure, but you benefit from it, and therefore we have ability to assess that specifically to your property. What this bill does is that allows another option, which would be is to process that through a utility fee, which in Bismarck's opinion is more sustainable. You run into issues on the special assessments about whether or not everybody pays that and pays it fairly. And they're of the opinion that the ability to do this fee is more equitable and more sustainable, and cuts down a lot on the processing work for the city. So thereby, I guess, cutting down the cost from that standpoint for the taxpayers. And the main conversation here has been, can we have this as a tool? And this is something Bismarck's been working on for a couple of bienniums, is my understanding of trying to get in place, as to be a tool, either you use special assessments or use this one. There is a community on the east side that would like to have an and as opposed to an either or, so they could use both tools at the same time. And that's kind of what's gotten bogged down in the legislature, I think, here recently. But it's about equity, fairness, doing infrastructure projects, and then the city be able to recoup that money back appropriately. And it appears that Bismarck has had some trouble recouping that money back effectively and efficiently by using special assessments. And I think this tool helps them do that better.
Do you see that there'd be a grand impact for us here in Minot? I know special assessments isn't a tool that we go to the well often for. We really do it for runoff, sewer improvements, and street light improvements. Do you see this helping us in the way we do business potentially?
It does potentially. I mean, we have a lot of things we're working on. I mean, we're investing a lot of our bonding capacity in flood mitigation and NAWS and, all these different projects that we're working on. We still have other things that we need to deal with, road infrastructure, preventative maintenance, replacement, those types of things. And so as you're using your bonding capacity on these other big priority items, what other tools do we have left to help address some of these other issues, but do it in a way that's fair and equitable and efficient? And so will we use this tool in the future? I don't know, but it would be great to have the option to consider that if we get to a point that we need a tool like this in the future.
I'm really glad you used the word option there, because the next two bills I want to talk about, I'm going to take them kind of in tandem here for both of you, kind of limit our options, right? I want to focus on these. They're House Concurrent Resolution Bill 3040 and 3041. We can call these local control bills or anti-local control bills. And to be brief, 3040 sort of pigeonholes our ability to fund our operation, and 3041 kneecaps the ability for the city of Minot to function financially. I know taxes can be a four-letter word to many, so let's talk about that in a second. First, why are these two bills bad policy, not just for Minot, but maybe communities across the entire state?
I think the main issue here is we take a look at local control in terms of the services that we're paying for as citizens. Taxes represent paying for our roads, our water, our fire protection, our police protection, the functionality, life, health, safety of the community. Some of these different bills have different mechanisms. One of them was to essentially take an individual's primary house and make that tax exempt. Well, that represents a significant portion of the community tax base to pay for things like fire, pay for police, pay for street repair and maintenance, water, sewer, and all of that. So it really, in many ways, takes a substantial amount of that cash flow to pay for the necessary services and just takes it away. Some of the others have been sending out any possible increase for property taxes to a vote. Well, I think looking at a lot of the bonding bills around the state of North Dakota that we've seen for schools, typically those votes always go down. Really what an attempt here it is, in my opinion, and I think a lot of other opinions, is taking the idea of managing our own city out of local control and sending it down to Bismarck. In many different versions of some of these bills, language really has just been, taxes are out of control, so they're going to try to hamstring the ability to manage those funds, manage the city's operation from down in Bismarck. What I'd really hoped this session, talking with a lot of legislators, if they have some proposals or ideas, come and talk with the city administration to find out, okay, what would this bill functionally do to a budget process for a community, not just Minot, but every community. So when they're making proposals, it isn't, well, let's just see what happens, but have a functional idea of the bill that they're proposing and how it really affects their own community and its ability to provide necessary services. So our big push has been send these out to a study. Go ahead and not just study Minot, go ahead and study every community and its functional process in how it develops its budget, on where those budget dollars come from and where they go, what they're paying for. And then in that holistic era, they'll essentially get the answers of what I just said. What is it that the taxpayer dollars are going to pay for? Now, if it's going to pay for a lot of other things that are separate from life, health, and safety, okay, that's going to come out in the study. But I think what they're going to find is our infrastructure is substantially underfunded, whether it be streets, roads, bridges, and water replacement. One thing that Harold just talked about is sewer and water infrastructure. A big portion of Minot is still sitting on cast iron water and sewer pipes, not just down in the valley, but these are the things that were put in the 1900s to the 1930s. Their lifespan is up. So if we're taking out this money out of the essentially the revenue from the tax base, is that coming out of Bismarck now? Or are we going to have to go and lobby for budgets every year? These are all questions that need answers. And I think that's why when we propose pushing all of these tax issues to a study, a lot of these legislators are going to get that answer. And I really hope that and trust that Minot is going to provide a significant amount of input in where our money comes from and where it's going and how it benefits the community to have local control on that.
Yeah, it's one thing to take a source away and not replace it with something else that's can leave a lot of communities sitting there hanging in the wind. And if that's what they want to do, we got to find out what those impacts may be. And that's what that study could really help us do. Harold, I want to, if you would indulge me here, let's end with you about these two bills in a way. Property taxes, sales taxes, whatever means municipalities find ways to fund their operation, they all have a place and a reason generally. As a city manager professional that's worked in many communities across the country, why are property taxes currently an important tool for communities?
Well, the quick answer is because of reliability, sustainability. They're easy to calculate. They come in consistently, and a lot of reasoning is they're very transparent, right? I often use it. So the primary funding streams that cities typically use to finance operations are property tax, sales tax, income tax, and franchise fees or service fees are your main components that you have a mix of in some capacity that cities throughout the country use. And every state is different. Every region is different. Some are very heavy on property tax. Some are very light on property tax, but heavy on sales tax and income tax. At the end of the day, though, there's a cost of doing business. There's a cost to providing service. Police, fire, streets, community development, planning. The list goes on of all these types of things that we do. And there's a cost to that. And there's a reason why we have that. And there's a reason why we have local control for communities to make that decision on their own behalf as far as what that prioritization is. But, kind of think a little bit about, investments in the stock market, right? Your best course of action is to diversify. And you have different things that are high risk that, you either have a significant chance of losing your money or you have a significant chance of a big win and really making a lot of money. And you have some things that you invest in that are pretty conservative. They're steady. You don't get a whole lot of return, but your guarantee of getting your money back out are really high. It's kind of the same thing with some of these revenue streams. Property tax is your workhorse. It's very stable. It's very predictable, and again, it's very transparent. You get your property tax bill every year. You know exactly what you pay. Sales tax, on the other hand, is more like your high risk, high reward potential. In that, if things are going really well, you can get a lot of revenue in that. But at the same time, it's not very stable. It ebbs and flows with the economy. You never know when something's going to cause your economy to go down, like COVID or something like that. And so, trying to plan on that as a revenue stream for the long term is very difficult. Also, in my opinion, it's not very transparent. I don't know very many people that are able to tell me how much they pay in sales tax every year. To a certain extent, we call that a blind tax. You pay it every day. You know you pay it every day, but over the period of a year, I don't know if I could personally tell you how much I pay in sales tax every year as I'm shopping and buying things and doing those kinds of things. And so a lot of us focus on property tax, but at least it's very transparent. It's very stable. And I know a lot of people say that they want government to operate more like a business, but we offer services that really can't function like a business, right? How many manufacturing firms and those types of things ebb and flow their employees based off of demand and sales, right? Sales are down, we let off employees. Well, do we want to be in a position in government that if sales tax is down, I start laying off police officers and firefighters, right? Which translates into slower response times, longer periods of times of providing service and safety and those types of things. We're in a business and this is one of the government's functions, is to provide stability in providing these services in an efficient, effective way that meet a public good and a public service that affects our quality of life and our safety here in the local government level, at the city level.
And Derek, I certainly don't want to I'll interrupt here only for the sake of nobody here is advocating for higher taxes.
Right.
The reality is, we've done a very, I think, difficult job over the last few years. And I know Harold's seeing this as he's digging into the budget right now, on where we found a lot of areas to cut or high efficiencies. It's basically putting the stamp on, here is why we're spending the money where we're at. And we're doing our best to keep taxes as low as they can. But at the end of the day, we have to pay for our services that are required: our fire, our police, our roads, our sewers, and everything else that comes with community, as far as having a functional, reactive city government. So at the end of the day, we're working our butts off to keep that as low as we can. But having that local control is really the mainstay of our argument.
It really comes down to response, right? Your city council is a lot more responsive than your state legislative session, especially since they only meet every 2 years. That would really be a whole nother hurdle that we'd have to find too, if we have to go down to Bismarck for funding for everything, right? Okay, thank you very much for that, guys. Is there anything else you kind of want to mention or add with our conversation today?
I mean, there's a lot of bills going on. We didn't get into NOS. We didn't get into CTE funding. Then we also didn't even touch on, recreational marijuana and its potential impacts, both positive and negative, going forward. So, a lot of significant conversation going on at the state legislature right now, or this legislative session, and it's been a busy time.
Well, I think that might be an opportunity for, let's call it the wrap, Derek, in a couple of weeks here, when the state legislature puts a wrap on everything. We've got a real, I think, strong pulse on where things are at, and we can come in and say, okay, here's exactly what we got for flood control. Here's some of the issues that have been pushed to studies. Here's some of the things that likely are going to be pushed to next session. I expect the recreational marijuana. I also expect to see an initiated ballot measure, like a lot of the legislators do. But there's a lot of important things coming through this session. So it'd be a great idea to touch base again. But there's one that I have to, just in case Colonel Michael Walters happens to see this, and that is the B-2 bomber that, is actually over this shoulder. So for that sake, I have to make sure in City Hall that we understand the B-52 bomber, Buff. is still the mainstay at Minot City.
I like that little addition there. We'll probably cut this for socials to make sure that that's circulated a little bit easier too for our, our based brethren and sisters too up there. Great. Yeah. And I'm glad you volunteered as tribute, Mr. Mayor. I do intend on asking politely for both of you to join me again when the session is over and we could talk about everything that passed and what that means and what we do going forward. And we'll continue that conversation down the line. But for today, thank you so much for making time for me and for us. I appreciate it. Happy Easter to both of you. Thanks again for meeting with me. Okay, that's Mayor Sean Sipma and City Manager Harold Stewart working hard in the final days of the legislative session. Again, gentlemen, thanks for your time. Now, this week ahead, we're changing our rapid COVID-19 testing hours at Fire Station number 1 with continued decrease in demand. Saturday testing will be eliminated starting this week. The change is really an adjustment by you. We've seen a decrease in that demand to the tune of about 100 tests a week or so. But there is still a demand and the virus is still spreading. So our fire department will continue to host and lead the rapid testing efforts through the entire month of April. Now, the new hours will be Monday, 8 to 2, unchanged there. Thursday, 2 to 7. Those are the same. The only thing is we did eliminate Saturday testing. There will be no Saturday testing for rapid COVID-19. Make sure that you pre-register as well. We eliminated that weekend testing, but this is only rapid testing and it will not help you with any international travel or testing requirements. Be sure to check with your destination on the specific needs for testing for travel, because this one will not get you into many borders. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't make a mention that COVID-19 vaccinations are still available to anyone 16 and up through the First District or your primary care provider. Great news was released just this past week regarding the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. That brand has proven highly effective in individuals 12 to 15 years old in clinical trials. So effective, it's actually to the tune of 100% efficacy. There were no actual infections reported for those in the clinical trials, and there were no serious side effects reported as well. Currently, Pfizer is the only vaccine available to 16 and 17-year-olds here locally. First District is taking appointments now for 16 and up. Unless you are 18, you must make the appointment over the phone. Parents, keep note, appointments will need to be made over the phone because the online portal doesn't allow you to choose the vaccination. Only one of those vaccines that they have in First District can be used. 16 to 17-year-olds. All legal adults, however, can schedule a vaccine appointment online. Now, this week ahead, our city council will meet to kick off the month of April. And after a few meetings with a pretty light agenda, this one has a little bit more girth to it. The two meetings that you can, or the two things that you should be expecting, or things that may be of interest to the broad community at Monday's meeting, will be one, an update on the Superfund site, that lot of land that formerly was a city dump on West Burdick, kind of by Mesa Arena. That saga will start to make potential progress as we look for EPA approval to let the Minot Park District turn this open area into, a grand public outdoor facility. Our Assistant Public Works Director will be updating council on Monday. And the second thing, our Community Development Department has some really cool things cooking up. Monday, you'll hear about a proposed project for parklets and streeteries, mainly for downtown. Spoiler alert on this one. It'll allow businesses to sort of enhance the public outdoor seating into the street. Now, there are some strings attached to that, and council will be fully apprised, as will you, of that program on Monday night. Now, thanks for joining me once again on this week ahead. Before you know it, I'll be telling you about all the traffic delays on this very program as construction season seems to creep closer. So next week, let's do a primer. I'll have 2 members from our engineering team meet with me, and we'll discuss the upcoming street projects for this season. I'll also open up the mailbag again next week and answer some of the questions from the community. You can submit your questions, if you have any, to our mailbag, minotnd.org/mailbag. And before I go, I'd love to give you a little reminder for you to give us a little feedback on our communication efforts as a city. You can do that by taking a very quick survey. Average time's about 3 minutes right now. That's at minotnt.org/minotpio. Tell me if this program is valuable to you, or if I should look for maybe other avenues to communicate to you and what those avenues might actually be. And as always, you can find us on all your favorite social media platforms at City of Minot. I want to wish everyone a happy Easter to those celebrating that holiday, a very kosher and joyous Passover to others that are celebrating the Passover weekend. Thanks for joining me. Let's get after it on this week ahead.